Welcome to I Have a Question number 6, being streamed live on May 11th and 12th, 2014. This is Jeff Lebo in Busan, Korea.
Dave Cormier, Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island.
This is Jennifer Madrill in Chicago, Illinois.
This is John Schenker in Stowe, Ohio.
And special guest, Matt Stevens in Al Ain, United Arab Emirates.
Yay!
Nice to see you.
Hooray! Hi,
At 4 in the morning, we must say.
And we should mention that this show happens every week at midnight UTC time, and we'd love for you to join us live. Check out event pages for global times. So our question this week is what is the question, Dave?
Well, we've had a lot of questions that sort of wandered around this, and I think we broke it down to how do we keep track of all of our stuff and keep finding our stuff. And I mean, it's one of those questions that it's really upfront for me right now because my students in my face-to-face class are very much coming up with this very issue. So as part of the structure of the class, they're supposed to keep track in a Google Doc of the things that they found, and already their Google Docs are getting so cluttered that they're like, but how am I going to remember all this stuff? And I'm like, that thing. So I figured it's perfect for me, so Jeff can answer all my problems. Jeff, how do you keep track of all your stuff?
All right, let's go around and share what tools or sites have we used in the last 48 hours where we check our stuff. For me, Feedly. It replaced Google Reader for me, and I want to check on all my students' blogs and whatnot. I have my section for Korean news and EdTech stuff and ELT stuff. Digo, not only do I use it for making sure I can find bookmarks when I have saved them, but I'm part of several groups, and for me that's probably one of the most useful filtering devices because I'll get a daily or weekly notification from the different groups saying here's what's been bookmarked, and if something looks interesting I'll check that out. Stilldowns.ca, get it every day, do a quick peruse, and those are the first things that come to my mind. Next.
Wow.
Well, you know what? I've gone full circle. As everyone knows here, we had, 10,000 links on Delicious before we stopped populating that. So that was getting to be what we used, and pretty soon it just became Google, like the internet. So if I wanted to find something, I just ended up going to Google anyway. So I have a couple different things. If I want to dip my toe, it was part of the question that we had was how do you keep current and things that are happening. And so I'll dip my toe in certain places like Twitter and things like that. And Jeff, you were saying Feedly. I don't even keep an aggregator of blogs anymore, unfortunately. And then if I really want to find something, I Google it. Because every time I try to create a repository, it gets so big and unruly that it doesn't really help me.
So we've gone from Jeff, who is really very well organized, to Jennifer, who is slightly less so, to me.
Basically uses the internet.
And I'm a mess,
I did.
right? I used to use Delicious and don't anymore. And where I am at this point is if it's something that I know I'm going to need imminently, like within the next week or so, I just leave the tabs open. So I have all these tabs. Of course, I'm logged into my Google account, so the Chrome tabs are supposed to sync between different devices, but they don't always. But I can just look in the history for any device that I was on and say, okay, well, I was on this site. But the other, for longer term than that, what I've realized is when I was tagging things in Delicious, I never went back to Delicious, right? So I would save a bookmark there, save a bookmark, and never, ever go back and read them. So what I've realized more recently is that if it's something that is worth saving, it's also something worth sharing. And so I'm more likely to tweet it or to post it to a Flipboard magazine or something like that. And then when I need it later, I remember that I've posted it. So I can just go back and search my Twitter stream and say, what was that site that I was looking at? Or what was that cool thing that someone showed me that I shared? And usually I can remember where I heard about it, so I can just go back to that person. But if I've shared it again, I can go back and search my own stream. And that's pretty much how I do it. It's very disorganized and messy, but it works.
Dan?
David. Oh,
Yeah. I sort of have a similar history. Feedly sounded really interesting, but then I read something unsavory about it. It was trying to. I can't remember exactly what it was doing. Maybe, do you remember anything about Feedly that it was maybe co-opting, stealing traffic from sites. Was that Feedly that was doing that?
Oh, don't know.
Anyway, I should look it up.
Google
Maybe
it.
I can look it up.
Google it. Find out.
Go look
I
for the
searched
link.
for it on Feedly and couldn't find anything about it. I don't know what you're talking about.
Go to Google.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, yeah, I might have some blog posts about it. That's one way I keep track of things is I'll
There you go.
mention it somewhere. So there's got to be somewhere in the last 6 months. But I switched over to Digo from Delicious because Delicious got so tacky. But I don't really use it very much anymore, as you guys don't. But at least I did make that switch. So mostly, I suppose I go into Facebook. I don't really use Twitter that much. It just got too overwhelming. You know, when you get so many followers or you're following so many people, it just seems a bit messy too. You know, Facebook, Twitter, those are places you can go and check things, but you can't really dig back too far. There's just not enough time. So you're sort of catching things at the moment, which is fine. I mean, I always tell people this is media. You know, I mean, I've got a television over here that's off, but I don't go back and dig up the things that happened, you know, while I slept. You know, I turn it on and I get it. You know, so and what goes around comes around. So you know, if it's important, it's going to be on the news. You know, on the top of the hour. So it doesn't matter if I missed it. So things just keep. You know, as long as you've got your network operating, things will keep flowing to you, one way or another. And then, of course, I suppose you know when you do something like you're doing, you know, I have a question. You're initiating contact with a network of peers that's keeping you current, or what Dave does, for example, a community is curriculum. You set up something like that, and you know,
And it's all that
next thing you
research
know,
we do before the show that really helps us stay oriented.
Yeah, sure. And so I've got Learning Together, which you know I keep abreast of what's going on because things I guess Google Communities is probably a big feeder right now. There's so many interesting ones.
Yeah, that's a good point. We aren't big Google. You're saying Google Plus communities, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So can you rattle off a few or that come to mind? Because I really honestly don't follow that many communities.
Yes, I can, and I can tell you that in learning in my call classes when I did the social networking week 6 months ago, and I'd introduce some Facebook groups and I'd introduce some Google Plus communities. The Facebook groups were much more robust. That has changed in 6 months. There are Google Plus communities, at least in the ELT community, with 17,000 members they're active and well organized. I find them much easier to navigate. Here's a link to my little social networking thing. If you scroll down, you'll see the Google Plus communities. Like the Facebook groups just aren't organized. They don't have sections the way the Google Plus communities. So if I want to find vocabulary stuff, grammar stuff, jokes, it's so much easier to navigate a Google Plus community. Please don't kill it, Google. I heard you might.
So, you know, this is kind of interesting because we're talking about a couple different things. One is how do we stay connected, and then the other aspect of the question is how do we help our students get connected. And it was fun watching Dave's latest group go through, and John and I hopped on a call when you were getting them interested in things. So what do you do, Jeff? It looks like for the
I just want to get back to our shy member who hasn't chimed in yet on how he keeps track of things. Shy little Dave, do you want to chime in?
Well, you guys were having such a nice chat. I didn't want to jump in. It sounded so good. I was learning stuff.
Sorry. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
For me, the one that I use the most is Google Docs. So for me, putting a link away without context is useless. I almost need like.
Can we see one of your Google Docs, please?
Oh no, that's not gonna happen. It's a disaster.
There are limits to the sharing.
I'll just start throwing stuff in it and throw an idea and half an idea and I'll leave it there because most of the things that I go looking for are connected to some crazy idea or something that I've had, and there may be 3 words in there, there may be 2 paragraphs or whatever, but I try to get the links in there with it so that when I go back and I think, oh, I remember that thing I wanted to do, then I can go back and find it in one place, and it not only has the links that may have been associated with it, but it also has the ideas that go along with it. The other thing that I'll say, and this maybe stretches the question a little bit, but one of the reasons I archive is I really enjoy going back through my own archive. So, like, I really love going back through all the music videos that I've posted on Twitter. So if I'm sitting around, I want to listen to something, I may flip back a year, pull up my Twitter video record, and start playing songs. And I think that I use the links that I curate, because I do the same thing that Vance and John do. I will post things so that I remember where they are. But I as much enjoy those, not because I go back to get one specific thing, but sometimes I'll wander back through things and go, oh yeah, I totally remember that thing. Because my memory's not good enough to go, oh yeah, remember that thing from 6 months ago? You really want it? That never happens to me. I'm not even close to that. But going back to that record, going back to a blog post from 4 years ago, and going, right, that was kind of a, yeah, I remember that person who had said that. That's the other way that I use the archiving stuff and the curation stuff. Not so much so I can find it again later, but...
I do a similar thing to that, Dave, except that I don't put the links in, and I do it on paper, which Jennifer's going to be shocked at. But I have this notebook, right? And I'll scratch down ideas. I got that idea from Zach Chase, who always has this little book with him that he just jots things down in. And when he has an idea, he puts it in there. And sometimes he'll flesh things out. And you know, sometimes I'll go back and flip through what was I looking at a month ago or 2 months ago. And just as I have new ideas, I'll jot them down. And eventually some of them become blog posts, and sometimes they get combined with other ideas from elsewhere in the book. And that's sort of how I keep track of ideas, but not necessarily resources.
So okay, I'm going to ask a second follow-up question to this, because I don't think it's only about content; it's also about people.
Yeah.
So how do you decide who you're going to connect to? And this is one of those pieces that is really, I find it very, very difficult to explain to people.
And my answer to that is most tools have the listing function, and I find that to be really essential to navigating. Facebook, you know, I don't check the whole stream. I check certain lists that I've made. So as soon as I become friends with someone on Facebook, they're tossed into a list. Same thing with Twitter. I mean,
but how do you choose? I mean,
my own internal taxonomy of people I connect with. So
flush that out for me here.
There's ELT people, there's EdTech people, there's Korea people, and I can put them in multiple categories. You know, Vanessa mentioned in the chat room, tagging is key, and I think tagging and categorizing is key. Even on YouTube, a function I haven't been using until recently is when I see a video and I want to remember it, instead of just liking it, I add it to a playlist, so that if I want grammar instruction videos or whatever, boom, make a grammar list. And almost every tool has this listing functionality, and it makes it so much easier to sort it and to you know, when you go to that tool, when I go to Facebook, just what are all my old trainees up to? What's going on in Korea? And it's so much easier to digest for me.
But Dave, were you talking about specifically the person? Like,
well, he totally confused that question. It's half the time he was talking about people, and then it was like videos and stuff, and then there was like, I don't know, pencils around his desk, and like we were all over the place there.
Listing.
Why don't you answer the question I asked?
So do you list people? So do you list people, Jeff? Or you list like cool stuff?
Yes. In fact, in Twitter, I have a little list called Buds. And it's just EdTechWeekly people, because you guys are always talking. Like, I don't check Twitter that often, but then we meet on Sundays or Mondays, and you guys are like, "Oh, did you see this tweet? Did you see that tweet?" So now before the show, I just check my Twitter Buds list. It's like, okay, that's John drinking beer, that's Dave drinking beer.
People follow up and ask if you're actually paying attention to them.
Right, because if I had to go back and find each of your tweets, it takes forever to find your drinking pictures. But this helps.
I just keep each of you in your own tab.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very people-driven, and in fact, before you even asked that question before, Dave, I put in the chat room, Jane Hart. I know I've talked about Jane Hart 20,000 times on Sunday nights in the past however many years, but there are people like that. I just know she's very dedicated to finding the latest and greatest, and she goes to great lengths to survey the universe of EdTech interested people. And so I think I'm with you, Dave. I hope I'm saying what you're saying. I latch onto people very much so. Even on Facebook, I'll say, oh, Ann Leftwich had a cool link, and so if I want to find it, I'll go Google her, or not Google, actually search within Facebook and find what she's posted recently and remember it based. And this reminds me of a conversation we had with. Do you remember when Alice Mercer was so angry at first when she was just getting into Twitter and things, and she said it's just not equal the way people listen to some people. Some people are listened to more, and that was just very frustrating to her that it wasn't equal, and it's just not. It's just not equal. And I think it has to do with the quality of what you put out there and.
Well, and the affinity relationship that you have with people, and there are some people who have. I can think of a half dozen people offhand who are not listened to and really should be, and another half dozen that maybe get listened to and have opinions that that I wouldn't necessarily serve up for that kind of thing. So I guess it really depends. I mean, there's a lot of popularity and status sort of stuff built into that too that that has an impact on that.
Yeah. Yeah. So Vance, how about you? We keep talking all over Vance.
Don't wait to be called on. You have to jump in.
Yeah. For me, I'm not sure when I got into listening to podcasts, but World Bridges was a big part of that, and the World Bridges communities and the EdTech Talk communities. And I just keep podcasts going all the time in one ear and out the other. And so in those podcasts, you start picking up people, and it turns out that most of them have really interesting, they keep coming up. It's kind of like all the little information that so you start getting to know people, like Paul Allison, for example, just one guy. I actually met him in New York when I went to New York, went on my way to go to his high school. So I was with Barbara Dew when I did that. She was another lady who just kind of popped into the picture, and that's the same year I met Jeff in New York. He was there too. So anyhow, and Jennifer, come to think, there we are. Dave, John, where were you?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So that's a coincidence, but yeah, that's how I kind of keep up with people. It's something like the Earth Day, April 22nd. That just comes around all the time. That's a community that kind of keeps itself going through a number of people. Jose Rodriguez, for example. Gosh, Doug Simonton is popping up every now and then. You sort of figure out what he's doing. So,
the fuel behind that, or the core technology, has been a Skype group chat, which at EdTech Weekly is still what we use for our synchronous communications. I now have some of my students using Hangouts, which has a lot of the same functionality. And here in Korea, there's something like Kakao, which is group chatting. WhatsApp allows that, because I do think once you sort of band together with your what's the stage of Mookology that you congregate, you find the people, not aggregate. What's after aggregate? Congregate. I don't know.
Cluster?
Cluster, there. When you cluster with the people that you're interested in connecting with. Thank you. So, glad we have Mr. Mook with us. There's a lot of technologies that allow you to keep that real-time chatting functionality, which I think is a very nice piece of the puzzle for connecting with people.
Yeah, so Skype has really neat affordances in that respect. I mean, just like that's how Earth Day happens. Is it keeps coming back alive, and probably Webcast Academy is another one that pops up every now and then. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you, Jen.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask John and Dave. In fact, I got John your little EdCamp mug, but it just seems like things like this will come along, like EdCamp or Dave with your class, where you'll get a new crop of people who, for whatever reason, haven't dipped a toe into these waters. And so what are your latest and greatest strategies to either force the issue, which I know, Dave, sometimes you throw them in the deep end and say, please swim, and sometimes you don't let them find their way into the water.
I've been finding out my secrets lately where I go and catch them on the back end.
Yes, I noticed. Didn't you actually met them like at a coffee shop or something, right? Wasn't it? But anyway, I'm just curious, like, what's the latest and greatest on that? Like bringing folks into the fold who have
As we were describing our ecosystems here, that was one of the things in the back of my mind was how do I explain this to someone who isn't already used to all these tools? How do I explain this? Yeah, it's kind of messy. I have a tab open, or maybe if I've shared it, I can go back and search for it. And not having a real strict regimented organizational structure for keeping track of these things works for me, but I don't know that it would work for everybody, and it's hard to explain to them how it works for me. So I think we want to get them connected. That's the most important thing, is listening to what others are saying and being able to contribute to those conversations. And then I think the second step of that, or maybe a tertiary step, is how do I keep track of things and organize them and figure out the workflow. And I think I would recommend either something like a Google Doc, especially if they're working, like I'm thinking teachers in a department or on a middle school team who are working together to try to pull together resources for a course or unit that they're teaching, that it would make sense to organize them in something like a Google Doc or a wiki or some online space that they can collaborate in. I guess using bookmarking tools makes sense, although they're out of fashion now. It's still a need that we have, and those are still tools to do that.
Wow, that was a really good summary, man.
I think the answer is Google Plus. That seems to be one that, since people are in Google, they're already there.
Google Plus in K-12 creates all kinds of problems.
Okay.
And not only that, but Google Plus, from a conceptual standpoint, is really difficult for people to understand. Like trying to navigate what all the options are and whatever. For me this year, my students were very resistant to collaboration. They were amazing professionals in their own right, not so experienced with the technologies. And what I did is I said, like, let's use Twitter, and I know we've got some frustration with that, but let's only tweet each other. And let's just hit the hashtag over and over again, and just every time you have the singlest, smallest problem, post it on Twitter. And let's just try to see if we can get a sense for what the collaboration can do in something that's just a straight stream. Because the nice thing about Twitter is that the first time you look at it, you can kind of understand that there are people and that there are people talking, and there's no like complex organizational structure for you to get your mind around. It's a deficiency from a community standpoint if you're looking long-term community. Certainly if you're Captain Content over there, it's more of a challenge because it doesn't organize that stuff in any kind of way. But I think from a starting standpoint, I agree with John Google Docs, because it's so easy to bring one more person in. But I think that the Twitter hashtag is a really nice place for people to start to get a sense of, particularly if you can get enough people, and I think we would all say this, and I think I've heard every one of you say this. If you have communities work and these kinds of things work, if you need something at first, right? So if you're like in your classroom and you need something right away, and all you think of is, if I put this thing in with a hashtag, somebody might get back to me, that's going to start the hook into understanding. And then maybe 5 minutes before you need something, you'll go to the community, and then maybe it's the day before, and then maybe you get to the point where you're giving back. But I think that Twitter's a nice place to start that development.
So would you say, and tying back to the original questions that were coming in about professional development, so say you were at a conference, and like John with your Ed Camp, would you go Dave's route and say, okay, we've got this hashtag for our conference, let's try to keep this going for a while to get a little conversation going? Or are those days gone? Where
I still use hashtags at conferences. Usually they're conversations with people. Sometimes they're resources. Often they're just making fun of other people who are at the conference who I already know. So I think if you looked at what I tweet at a particular conference, maybe 10% of it is useful, and there's a lot of other stuff there that nobody's really going to care about.
Look, there's Dave with a bird.
Yeah, right, exactly. And the bird wasn't even there. I do still tend to share things via Twitter. And at unconferences in particular, and since you've mentioned it twice, EdCamp is this Saturday, so if you're in the Cleveland area, it's at Independence High School and you should come. In those kinds of contexts where you don't have someone in charge of a session and you don't have slides or presenter notes or a resources page on the site for the conference, then I think it's more valuable that people can share things from those sessions. about whatever that topic was or wherever that conversation went. So yeah, I guess it's useful from that perspective.
You know, we also at Advances is maybe a place where you could step in. I'm sure you hear all the time of cool things people are doing. How do you prevent the overload where you're just like, okay, I'm done. I can't follow all these things all the time, or how do you self-filter what you're going to spend your time doing, and especially finding new things.
Duck underwater. I want to just get rid of it, or go for a jog. No, I mean you can't, because it's media. You know it's just the only difference between the digital technologies that are coming up is that they're new. I mean, take something like Google Glass, for example. All the controversy that's going on around that. Whereas people are, you can take out your cell phone and you can take pictures, and people don't think that's that big a deal. But if you're just walking around with glass, it creates all kinds of social problems. But of course, it's going to be second nature. Everyone's going to be wearing glass at some point. But or whatever the next step is, the little dot on your forehead, that's always on. But I think one thing you guys are modeling. At least that's what I thought. You were so clever, and I'm not sure if you realize what you were doing, but yeah, I'm sure you do. But you're organizing this event on EduQuestion. What's your tag? What's the tag for the
IHAQ?
EduQuestion is
EduQuestion.
EduQuestion. Okay, yeah.
Oh, really?
That's folksonomy. That's another thing.
Such a good job of organizing things.
Yeah, but I mean, how do you find this event? You can, if you go to edtechtalk.com, it's all past. There's nothing about what's happening in the future. If you go to the event page, I just actually found this out last night. The event page doesn't actually lead you to a Hangout. So, but you're organizing it. Because people can ask questions. You're getting all the questions. You've got all a dozen questions there that people tweeted you. So you're doing it. You're the model, and just watching this come together is kind of interesting. How I thought that was a really interesting example of the technology, and of course those hashtags that you can use in whatever the tag is, if it's EduQuestion or IHAQ. I just tried to search IHAQ. But anyway, you can put those in Facebook, and you can put them in Google Plus, and they'll aggregate there as well. So this is really productive. Just like you say, going around hashtags.
We've got 2 minutes left. How about one thing that you're trying out right now when you're wondering whether or not it's going to work? And I say that because I have one. I'm actually, for the first time, gone back to Reddit since 5 or 6 years ago, and I'm discovering that it's a really good way to keep track of the really weird things that I'm interested in, and to sort of keep up to date with those things. So particularly as my interests get down to a fine point, so my coffee roasting, for instance, really, really easy way to keep up to date with it, because it doesn't only narrow down to coffee roasting, it narrows down to which roaster I have. And you can go to one place, set it up, go into those places, and it can be a really nice way of keeping up and keeping track and keeping that past history there too. Anybody else?
All right, Flipboard. Playing with Flipboard. I love Flipboard on the phone. I love it on tablets. It's a cool interface for interacting with content, but you can create magazines. And so one of the things we're playing with in my school district is we've created a couple hashtags that we can tweet to, and those go to Flipboard magazines, and we can share those with our teachers, and we have. So we have a Connected Educator magazine, and we have an assessment magazine, and a technology and learning magazine, and so our teachers can look at that, and as we add things to it, they go there and it aggregates it automatically, and we're trying to model that so our teachers can also do that with their curriculum. And their instructional resources. So we're not sure if it's going to work, but we're playing with it.
Okay, QR codes. They're just popping up in my classroom, and my students are just walking around with their iPads and going online, and they're just they're little Easter eggs, or they're hidden. They always offer surprises, and there's so many ways you can utilize them. So embed them in web pages, and then the guys can come up and take that and go back to the web page you're on, and that sort of thing. So I guess that's what's kind of propping up in my present day.
Wow, that one, that's like a blast from the past. I haven't heard of that one in a while. And speaking of blast from the past, it fits and starts with me with Evernote, and so I recently purchased Samsung Note, where you can literally write on it very well with a nice little pen, and it's very integrated with Evernote. And so I'm trying desperately. I just have yet to really fully bond with it, but folks who love it swear by it. So I'm giving it one last try.
You're going honest, Jeffy?
For me, it's hanging out. Last Friday, I had a virtual class with my face-to-face undergrad students, and for 2 hours, I combined classes, and they had to participate for 15 minutes. So people were walking around campus participating, they were on the subway participating, and it was crazy and chaotic, but kind of fun. So figuring out how to make that instructionally useful, and also, we have the text hangout now, and so it helps me be able to nag about assignments and create some of the social bonding in class that doesn't happen in a classroom but can happen afterward when people start saying, what are you doing this weekend? But figuring out how to make that worthwhile.
Text hangout? Tell us what that is, Jeff.
When you have a hangout in Google+, you can...
Like, do you have a weekly one set up, like at a certain time?
The text hangout, no, but the text hangout exists. I mean, right now, if I go to my Google Plus page and this is my most recent hangout with you all. So just like we can be in our video hangout, I can type here, and this will pop up on your mobile device and on your computer and wherever you are, and you can... Wow, look at that. We're texting.
It's beeping all over the place. Yeah.
Half my house just beeped.
Yeah. My alarm's going off in the other room.
Cool.
Google Forms. That's another thing that really goes with QR codes, because that QR code can take you to a Google Form interaction in the class. Is just tripping along.
Sorry, are you saying forum or form?
Form, F-O-R-M. Forms,
okay, yeah.
Google Forms and Google Docs, or Google Drive. I don't know. It's just things that are just coming up. What I'm doing now, because they just happen to be present because suddenly everyone's got iPads.
And for those who are thinking, oh my gosh, those text hangouts are so noisy, you can change your settings to eliminate the noise notification.
Okay.
Well, take us out, Jeff. Time up.
All right, there you have it. There was a question. We tried to answer it. I don't know how much we did, but we will kind of continue on this because we talked about how to deal with our stuff, but there's more related to keeping up with professional development and other stuff. We want more questions. Please tag them with EdTechWeekly or IHAQ.
I think we're at IHAQ at this point.
Really?
I don't know. Are we not?
We're getting more action on EdTechWeekly.
Well, then let's do EdTechWeekly then.
But I like IHAQ too. I don't know. Tag them what you want. All right. Tag whichever you prefer, and whoever gets the most.
And if we pay attention to what you said, then you use the right one.
Join our Google Plus. Go find EdTech Talk on Google Plus communities, and please join that, because that's how we're sending out invites, and we don't want to annoy people too much. But if you're part of the EdTech Google Plus community, you'll get an invite. Ask questions. Have a great week. Thanks. See you next time.